Someone out there saying that Jonathan Kuminga is the most overrated player in the NBA, and we're going to talk about it. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is the good word, everyone? Charlie Walter here, formerly of 95.7 The Game and KPIX in San Francisco, where I covered the Warriors. This is Locked On Warriors, and it's brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. On today's show, we have a special guest. It is Marc Grandi of 95.7 The Game in San Francisco. There you are. Good to see you, Grandi. How you been?
I'm doing well, Chuck. How are you?
Doing well. Let's talk some Warriors. 3 topics to get to. 1, Jonathan Kuminga labeled as the most overrated player in the NBA. I know the source is just one person, but of course, we got to discuss it in the offseason. Also, the Golden State Warriors and their money problems right now, why it's preventing them from signing Quentin Post. And do we have a sleeper pick for this year? Someone that we saw in the summer league or that's maybe lower down on the roster that could have a big season. But let's start with Jonathan Kuminga and being overrated. The list was as such, and it was by Bleacher Report's Dan Favale on the Hardwood Knocks podcast. He says number 5 is Jonathan Isaac. The 4th most overrated player in the NBA is Jamal Murray. Number 3 is Miles Bridges of Charlotte. Number 2 is Houston's Jalen Green. And number 1 on that list is Jonathan Kuminga, saying, quote, "I don't trust the jumper. I don't trust the ability to generate his own shot unless he's in space. And the defense is all over the place. He doesn't rebound. So I don't think it's a hot take to say he's pretty overrated. At the same time, I do think his potential is stupidly high." Grandi, your thoughts on this? And how about him using the hedge there so no one can be mad? I think he's going to be great.
Well, I kind of disagree with the entire premise because I don't know who is comparing Jonathan Kuminga to like stars in the league right now. I think we all believe that he's got decent potential. I mean, I was listening further to what he said, Dan Favale on Bleacher Report, and he said, we're talking about him as if he almost has this Mikal Bridges type of non-star value. Okay, first of all, Mikal Bridges is one of the best two-way players in the NBA. If there is anyone out there who thinks that Jonathan Kuminga at this very moment is as good or near the level of Mikal Bridges, you are absolutely crazy. So I think I disagree with the entire premise of this conversation. I don't know how you can consider Jonathan Kuminga one of or the most overrated player in the NBA when I don't think most people rate him at the level where you can even possibly be overrated by that much. I mean, I think we all agree that he's got decent potential, Chuck, but I don't think anyone in their right mind is calling him a legit star at this stage. And really the only people on this list that you can possibly be majorly overrated on are guys that are generally considered really, really good. And I don't think Kuminga's at that level yet.
I don't think I've ever flipped on the TV at a national level and seen like Stephen A, Shannon, Skip, the talking heads, as we call them. I don't ever see them talking about Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, they'd be more likely to talk about a Tebow comeback to go on the path to reach Major League Baseball than talking about Jonathan Kuminga for a full segment. So overrated has to imply that he's highly regarded around the league.
Exactly.
And it doesn't seem that's the two don't correlate right now. I got to tell you this, though. One, even if he was highly rated, he's still pretty damn good for a 21-year-old. Averaged more points last year than Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Jalen Brunson, Jaylen Brown did at 21, plus averaged as many points as Giannis did at 21. So in that regard, he's ahead of schedule. But the big thing that I look at with these young players is how they be playing if they got more minutes. And Kuminga averaged more than 30 minutes over the course of just 2 months last year. It was January and February. He put up a stat line of 20 points, 5 rebounds, 18 points, 5 rebounds in those 2 months. Post All-Star break numbers, they went up, shot above 50% from the floor last 5 months of the year. So per the splits, he got significantly better. Played 40 minutes one time all year, put up 22 and 9 on 8 of 16 from the floor. So one, why would he be so overrated even if he was regarded as a great young player? But I don't think, to your point, that around the league, Jonathan Kuminga is some big talking point.
Yeah, and the other thing is the dude's 21 years old as you're laying out, and you compare him at age 21 to some of these other guys. Kuminga, is equal to or if not better if you're just looking at counting stats. And of course, basketball is so much more than how many points are you scoring and are you getting rebounds. And that's one thing that I agree with Favali about is he needs to be a better rebounder for his size and his athleticism. But the dude is 21, and this past year was the first time he got legitimate run. And let's not pretend that this season was a walk in the park either. I mean, he and his camp or whoever it was, took to the media multiple times. And, the report was that he had, quote, lost faith in Steve Kerr. Like, this was not an easy season for Jonathan Kuminga. He had to go to those lengths just to get consistent playing time. And whether you want to blame Steve Kerr for that or the situation or whatever it is, okay, we can have that conversation too. But the fact of the matter is, as well, Jonathan Kuminga is 21 years old, already been in the year 3 years. This was his third year, but really didn't get consistent playing time on a nightly basis until the second half of this most recent season. And he's still just a pup, 21 years old. I think where this conversation maybe takes a turn is where you consider the Warriors' expectations and their goals and their timeline, because you have an aging veteran roster and you need some help from others. But that's an unfair burden to place on Jonathan Kuminga because he's 21 and hasn't really had consistent playing time until just now. So I think this whole conversation is really, really unfair to Jonathan Kuminga. If he was in a different situation where you didn't have a top 10 all-time player in Steph Curry in the final few years of his career, the conversation around Kuminga would be entirely different. But because he's on a roster that is trying desperately to win now, it's kind of difficult to not come away a little bit disappointed by the first 3 years of Kuminga, but it has nothing really to do with him and more so just the extenuating circumstances around him on this roster.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, with the Warriors bringing in Terry Stotts and Jerry Stackhouse in the offseason, like, what do you think those two coaches, because I would imagine the fact that Steve Kerr is bringing in these two assistant coaches, part of the reason has to be for Jonathan Kuminga's development, you would think. They needed a change in there, getting maybe some younger voices that resonate. I don't know exactly why they're going with Stotts and Stackhouse. Based on everything that you've heard from 95.7 The Game, and you got your ear to just about everything. You have guests on every single day. You're producing, you're hosting, you're cutting sound when you're not doing those two things. So you're listening. Have you heard anything about Stotts or Stackhouse specifically working with Kuminga?
I'm not specifically in terms of Kuminga, but I'm sure that's part of it. I think what's interesting with the coaching shakeups is there was a couple of years ago, I guess now a few years ago, the Warriors made similar coaching staff changes. That was, I think they got rid of Jaron Collins at that point and maybe another, I forget exactly who, but they brought in Kenny Atkinson. That was a major change. And then what happened that first season after those coaching changes, they won the championship in 2022. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that I think they're going to go out and win it in 2025. But the last time Steve Kerr looked at his bench, looked at his staff and saw, hey, we need some new thoughts. We need some new ideas. We got to change things up a little bit. They turned around and won a championship. So I think, Steve Kerr can, and I think he's fairly owned up to some of his shortcomings and his mistakes, and he deserves some blame for how the last two seasons have gone. But I also do think he is, aware enough that potentially the development hasn't gone well as much as you would have liked, and he's doing something about it. And again, the last time that happened, they made major changes to their coaching staff. They won a championship, and they took off, and Jordan Poole developed like crazy that year, right? And who knows how that's going to work moving forward. But for every Jordan Poole, you can point to a James Wiseman. So there's kind of a give and take here. But I do think the Warriors deserve a little bit of credit for, realizing that maybe they need to make a major, shaking things up. And we'll see how Stotts is well respected across the entire league, did a great job in Portland, unfortunately came up short year after year, but that's what happens for the vast majority of teams. Jerry Stackhouse, experience at Vanderbilt as a head coach, a really, really good role player and better than that for his NBA career. I'm excited to see the impact that they have. But you're right. I think a big emphasis is going to have to be on Jonathan Kuminga's development, or just the young guys in general, their development. We'll see how many of those are on the roster come October. But it is going to be, I think, centered around development of those young guys because they're the future of the team, no doubt.
No doubt. Coming up, Warriors are pinching pennies. They have a roster spot open and could use some help, but how do they free up some cash? We're talking finances. Coming up. All right, I'm a big fan of Major League Baseball, Mark. Big fan. Love going to games during the summer. Have fond memories of going down to Oracle Park in a coat, because that's what
It gets cold. Yep.
country don't realize. Warriors fans that are, in Hawaii, because I know Hawaii has a huge Warriors fan base. You don't realize that those San Francisco Giants games are a little cold. But Gametime's the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. It makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on Gametime actually go down closer it gets to the first pitch. So if you are thinking about going to a baseball game late, you get there near first pitch. After first pitch, you pull up the app, you're getting cheap tickets. Easy as can be and flexible. So last minute deals, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, Mark. So Quentin Post, this is very interesting. He's a 7-footer out of Boston College that the Warriors took with the 52nd pick. They liked him enough to trade back into the draft after they had traded their second-round pick for Lindy Waters. And he plays a couple summer league games, scores 10 points in limited action coming off a foot injury. He's not on the roster, however. The Warriors can't sign him because they have $533,000 to work with to stay below the apron. He would need over $1 million as a second-round pick. I found that very interesting. More interesting, Bleacher reports Zach Buckley says that the Warriors should go after Gordon Hayward on a vet minimum contract. I mean, is this a case of national media not knowing what the hell they're talking about? Or how do they make the finances work? I know it's confusing forget just the casual NBA fans. For people that cover this stuff every single day, the finances are not an easy thing. But when you hear national writers throwing out, why don't they just go out there and get Gordon Hayward? Like, do they realize the boggle that the Warriors are in terms of staying under that cap?
Yeah, it's extremely, it makes your head spin, and it's new too. And the new CBA is way more convoluted and difficult to understand than the old one. There's so many new intricacies. I think it's pretty simple for the Warriors this season, though, because of the moves that they made. I think it was using the mid-level exception. They are hard capped at the first apron. They can't go above the first apron, and they're right up against it, as you were talking about. What, like $500,000 they have right around there?
533.
That's what they have. Even if they wanted to go out and sign a vet min, they couldn't, because that would put them over the first apron. Now, vet mins are the only free agent contracts they can sign because they're also over the salary cap. That's also a rule in the NBA. If you are over the cap, you can't go out and just sign any free agent. It has to be a vet min guy. So the Warriors are already kind of capped there, but because of their other moves, they are hard capped at the first apron. So if a vet min deal puts them over the first apron, they can't even do that. What does it mean? It probably means there's some move coming up to free up a little bit of space and make sure they can fill out the rest of the roster the way they want to. That would be the only way, unless they're going to go out and cut somebody. I mean, I guess that's a cost-saving move as well. But in order to sign Quentin Post, in order to go out and sign Gordon Hayward, if the national media wants that to happen, is going to will it into fruition, they need to just save some money elsewhere. And the only way you do that is by shipping out some money.
I saw an interesting report today rumor, report, whatever you want to call it. We talk about it on Locked On Warriors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I didn't get that one off at the beginning. Shameless plug. Like the stream if you're watching on YouTube, everyone. And it's free and available wherever you get your audio podcasts. I got it in. But with that being said, one of these deals that I saw online involved Andrew Wiggins and either a first or second round pick and it was actually interesting. It was to the Toronto Raptors for Bruce Brown, the former Nugget and NBA champion. And you're saying, well, Bruce Brown averages less than Wiggins, even on Wiggins' worst year. Like, why does that make sense? Because it makes sense financially. And then the Nuggets the Raptors would take on Wiggins' contract. And meanwhile, the Warriors would have only 1 year of Bruce Brown, which gives you the next, I think Wiggins is getting paid the next 3, right? Gives you 3 years of some financial flexibility and the ability to make up for maybe one of your previous mistakes if you don't think Andrew Wiggins has it in him, and the Raptors do. So I found that one a little bit interesting.
It is interesting. I like Bruce Brown as a player. However, I think the Warriors are in a spot, and it's not an ideal spot because, I mean, we all know the Andrew Wiggins experience over the last 2 years. You come off the high of him being the second best team on a championship team, second best player on a championship team. And then you deal with the last 2 seasons of when he's playing, generally inconsistent, and he always leaves you like wanting more. And then also the time away from the team due to personal reasons. And can't lie about it. It's pretty frustrating as a fan of the Warriors to deal with that over the course of 2 seasons. But you also look at the way this roster is constructed, Chuck. And I think for me, you come to the conclusion the Warriors need Wiggins. They need him. Even if he's not going to be great, he's their best perimeter defender. Who else is guarding anybody on the perimeter for this team?
They hope Kuminga.
You hope
they hope Kuminga, so he's not the most overrated player in the NBA.
I mean, I think maybe the one part of that take by Dan Favali, or however you pronounce his name, the one take that you agree with is the defense is kind of all over the place. You don't really know what you're going to get with Kuminga defensively. He certainly has all the tools to do that, but has he ever really put it out there consistently? No. The one thing that Wiggins has done pretty consistently is be a pretty darn good defender. You take Wiggins off this team, and Bruce Brown is a fine defender, but the Warriors aren't going to start him at the 3, I don't think. You take Wiggins off this team, I think they get a lot worse defensively. But it's also a situation where Wiggins on this team might not work. I mean, we've been through it for a couple of years now, so I don't know. It's kind of the position the Warriors are in. You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. I'm not sure.
If you had to put some money on it right now, let's say we're betting a stake on it, and you take the fact that the Warriors are gonna make a move or the fact that the Warriors aren't gonna make move. It's minus 100 odds. It's 1,000 plus 100. It's even for you. Which one are you going with? You think they're done, or you think they're making another move?
I mean, if we're talking just like moves on the margin, probably something. If we're talking,
I'm talking a needle mover. I'm talking something that'll get the people going. That'll make the A block of this show. Because I know they've made some moves in the last few days, but
yeah, those are minor things. I will say I don't think there's a major move coming by like the time the season starts. I think they're trying and they really want to do something, but I think the way it's all going to play out is they have to let the marketing situation figure itself out first before they do anything else. Because I don't know how you feel, Chuck. I think marketing is an absolute dream fit on this roster. And you kind of got to wait for Utah to figure out what they're going to do. And there's a big day coming up in a couple of weeks, August 6th, the day that he becomes extension eligible, which is 6 months to the day of the trade deadline. If he signs the extension on August 6th, he can then be traded at the deadline, on the deadline. I think the Warriors are going to they don't have any power in this. It's up to the Utah Jazz and Lauri Markkanen. I think they're going to get an extension done. Markkanen wants to do that because it's the way he gets the most money if he signs the deal with the Jazz as opposed to with anybody else after he gets traded. He gets the most money, he signs that, and then he potentially gets traded at the trade deadline. And I think the Warriors have reason to maybe be willing to be a little bit patient and let the first half of the season play out and see what they got. give yourself a little bit more information before you ultimately decide on what move you might want to make. And I just am not sure there's another needle mover out there other than Lauri Markkanen that fits this team. So I think they're kind of going to be forced to be a little bit patient, and I don't think we see a major move until potentially the deadline.
And then Quentin Post. I don't need much. We spent an entire episode yesterday talking about Post, but I just want your overall yes or no. Are you bringing him on the roster? Did you see enough during the summer league? Or even if you didn't see enough, are you just looking at that size and saying there's no question?
Hey, he's a big that can shoot. Warriors need both those things. They need size. They need shooting. Put him on the roster. I'm not sure how much he's going to play, but space the floor a little bit if you ever get out there, big man. It's why the Warriors need Lauri Markkanen so bad, in my opinion. They need both those things.
Yeah, put him on there. Shoot your shot at the end of the day. He's 7 feet tall and shoots at 40% from deep. Coming up, the Warriors do have some intriguing players that no one's talking about. Which could be a mainstay in Mission Bay? Rattling off 4 names for you, Grandi. Daquan Plowden, Kevin Knox, Ethan Thompson, Pat Spencer. Do any of those 4 names mean anything to you?
Ethan Thompson is a name that it just struck me in my heart because he went to Oregon State. I'm a Duck. Shout out Oregon. Go Ducks. Oregon State. He led the Beavers to that crazy Elite Eight appearance a few years ago, if you remember, the year when UCLA was also there, and Gonzaga and Jalen Suggs hit that crazy half-court buzzer beater against the Bruins.
It was Wayne Tinkle, right? It was Wayne Tinkle's Beavers, yeah. And then the next year he won like 2 games. Yeah,
that's the Wayne Tinkle experience up there at in Corvallis at Oregon State. But Ethan Thompson, I always liked his game. Watching him in the Pac-12, I'm not sure he's an NBA guy. Daquan Plowden, though, he had a hell of a summer league, and he parlayed it into a 2-way deal with the Warriors. So I'd look for Daquan Plowden. The Kevin Knox name is funny. I have a hard time keeping a straight face watching Kevin Knox play in the summer league, and I get it. You're chasing a dream, bro, but you're like, what, a 6-year vet, and you're playing in the summer league? That's rough. That's rough. I'm not so sure that if Kevin Knox hasn't stuck in the league yet, he's ever going to. I think of that group, I know you mentioned Pat Spencer as well, but of that group, I think I'm most interested in Daquan Plowden. He's got some decent size. He showed an ability to shoot a little bit. He's 25, but you don't really care about the age at this stage. You're looking for just a little bit of an impact here or there. Daquan Plowden for me of that group, Chuck, is the one I'm most interested in.
Wise men think alike. I love Plowden, man. I think between him hitting over 40% of his threes, not just catch and shoot, it was off movement, it was off the dribble. That's nice to see. Didn't have his feet set on a lot of them, was just hitting everything. Had a sick chase from behind block that he pinned off the backboard at one point. That
He's
was
an athletic
awesome.
freak.
He is. Yeah. Tip slams, oops, competitive defender, was first team all defender in the MAC conference at Bowling Green. I saw Alchemist, great Warriors podcaster, said it was in Colorado, Bowling Green. Then someone commented, no, it's in Kentucky. And I'm sitting there as a Midwest guy. It's in Ohio. It's in Ohio. There is a Bowling Green, Kentucky. But that's not the one. But Plowden, man, I think he may do something. And then talking about Knox, was on that same collegiate team as Shea Gilgeous-Alexander for John Calipari at Kentucky. He's a microwave. I remember a game against West Virginia against Bobby Huggins. They were down like 17 points, and Knox just went off in the second half, dunks and threes. Looks the part of an NBA player until you see him move laterally. Averaged 13 as a 19-year-old rookie in New York, but with him, he needs to be a better defender, needs to rebound, shoots a ton of threes for a 34% shooter. Here's the stat that would scare me as Warriors front office on giving him a chance, although you could bring him into training camp maybe on a deal, but he averages less rebounds per game than 3-point shots in his career. Averages like 2.9 rebounds and 3.2 threes taken per game. That's not going to cut it for 6'7". That's not what the Warriors need right now, unfortunately. But he did have 31 in the semi, so I think Knox will probably land somewhere.
There was a moment, you remember the trade deadline when the Warriors dealt James Wiseman to the Pistons. Kevin Knox was on that Pistons team, And there was a moment before we realized that the Trailblazers were in on that, what turned into a 3-team deal. There was a moment where it felt like Kevin Knox was going to be the return for James Wiseman. And at the moment, I was a little bit freaked out. Ultimately, it became GP2, and you also gave up like 4 second-round picks to get it done. But there was a moment where it seemed like Kevin Knox was going to be a Warrior. Ultimately, it turned out not to be. But maybe he's able to make that momentary scare for me into a reality a couple of years later.
That's the most disrespectful trade that I've ever seen. Because typically you look at a player that has that much potential, and even if they're young, you would think that the value would just, someone out there would say, okay, we'll give up an aging vet, or we'll give up, something pretty decent for a number 1 overall or number 2 overall pick 2 or 3 years prior that has had some experience in the NBA and is still under the age of like 22 years old. Yeah. And the Warriors to get GP back. And I know Peyton had a nice previous season, but he was injured at the time when they got him. There were reports out when the Warriors did pick him up that there were some bad injuries. Hell, it took him a while to get going, right? He came in injured and was for a while there.
I remember when the trade first happened, and then ultimately it was GP2 didn't pass his physical. The Warriors were a little bit surprised, and they felt like there was, not
some bamboozlement. Yeah.
And they were, I don't know exactly what all went down behind the scenes, but the Warriors were pissed at the Blazers. They were upset.
I forgot about that.
And because it was like a 3-team deal, it might have ultimately been more than that, but it was at least 3 teams, the Warriors, the Pistons, and the Blazers. Because it was a 3-team deal, you can't just like call off one leg of the 3-team deal. It calls off the whole thing. So if GP2 didn't pass his physical and the Warriors weren't okay with that, they're stuck with Wiseman after they traded him for a bag of peanuts. Imagine how bad that situation would be. So the Warriors ultimately had no choice but to say, all right, Portland, you pissed us off, but we're going to have to accept the deal anyway, and we're going to get an injured player back in return.
Yeah, Sadiq Bey was in there for about 5 minutes, right? So that was an interesting experience, and crazy to think that James Wiseman's stock fell that quickly to where no one was willing to take a chance on him.
Now he's a pacer, though. You never know. Maybe he'll have a good year.
Rick Carlisle, he's a good coach. He's the whisperer, man. Marc Grandi, thanks for joining Locked On Warriors. We're going to have you on more often. Maybe join us for a post-game show as the season pops on. If Nahigian and the guys at 95.7 aren't working you into the ground.
We'll figure something out.
We appreciate the time, and thanks for coming on, my guy.
Yeah, of course. Good to see you, Chuck.
Locked On Warriors is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Chuck Walter, Marc Grandi, Kylan Mills back in the saddle later this week. Thanks, everyone, for joining.